Thank you, sir. I move that this bill be now read a second time. The Teachers Registration and Standards Miscellaneous Amendment Bill 2020 will amend the Teachers Registration Standards Act 2004 to modify the size and composition of the Teachers Registration Board and expand its functions. It will support the implementation of relevant recommendations from national reviews related to teachers' registration. It will improve oversight of persons granted special authorities to teach. It will address various other technical and operational issues with the Act. The education and the development of children and young people in our society is essential to that society being informed, productive and well-functioning. The success of our society will, in many ways, depend upon the quality of our teachers. The purpose of the Teachers Registration and Standards Act is to ensure that every teacher working in South Australia is appropriately qualified, they are competent to teach and they are a fit and proper person to have the care of children. This is so important. The Act establishes the board and provides it with the functions and powers it needs to administer and oversee the registration of more than 35,000 teachers in both government and non-government schools, preschools and early childhood services around South Australia. Since the commencement of the Act, there have been significant changes to the regulation of the teaching profession across Australia, including through the introduction of the National Framework for Teacher Registration and the Australian Professional Standards for Teachers. In more recent years, the Education Council has commissioned substantial reviews into teacher education and registration, including a review of the preparation of student teachers by higher education institutions in Australia undertaken in 2014 and the National Review of Teacher Registration undertaken in 2017. The findings of these reviews supported the need for changes to the education and regulation of teachers across Australia to improve teacher quality, to strengthen child safety and streamline registration processes. In addition, the findings of both the Child Protection System's Royal Commission here in South Australia and the National Royal Commission into Institutional Responses to Child Sexual Abuse have prompted significant reform of child protection here in South Australia, including substantial changes to the screening and oversight of registered teachers. While these reforms have introduced increased child safety measures in respect of teachers, the government believes more can be done to improve child safety and to respond to the outcomes of these Royal Commissions. The bill will address these issues and ensure the Act continues to provide a sound framework for the registration and the oversight of teachers in South Australia. In particular, the bill will amend the Act to provide that the welfare and best interests of children is the paramount consideration in relation to the operation, administration and enforcement of the Act. The bill will provide a number of new functions to the board. It codifies and strengthens some existing activities that the board undertakes. This includes functions for the board to accredit initial teacher education programs, to undertake or support reviews of research and data collection, to develop and maintain a code of conduct for registered teachers, and to recognise quality teaching and leadership in the teaching profession. The bill updates provision for the membership of the board to provide improved flexibility in the size and composition of the board. Members of the board are currently appointed on the basis of nominations by particular stakeholders. The government is introducing changes to ensure that members of the board are appointed on the basis of the knowledge, skills and experience that the board needs to carry out its functions effectively. Importantly, the bill will ensure that the board's membership includes practising teachers in the areas of preschool education, primary education and secondary education. The expertise of a legal practitioner and, I think very importantly, and I know that the Shadow Minister shares this view, the perspective of a parent representing the community interest. The board, though, through amendments to provisions for committees of the board, will also be able to draw on the expertise of persons who are not members of the board. The bill will clarify the current arrangements for the employment of staff of the board and make it easier for a member of the staff of the board to be appointed to act for the Registrar in the Registrar's absence. The bill will introduce a number of amendments to the requirements for teacher registration to improve administrative efficiency in the board's operations and improve the registration and renewal process for teachers. This includes, for example, extending the term of registration from 3 years to 5 years and providing an option for the annual payment for fees for registration. And this annual payment measure will assist those registered teachers who might have had difficulty paying registration fees upfront for 5 years. The bill includes various amendments to improve the oversight of persons granted a special authority to teach, to ensure that as far as possible they are subject to the same rigorous requirements as registered teachers. The bill also includes various amendments to improve provisions of the Act that enabled the Board to deal with unprofessional conduct, incompetence, incapacity and issues of fitness and propriety in the teaching profession. This includes, for example, providing the Registrar with the power to suspend a teacher's registration where the Registrar forms a reasonable belief that the teacher poses an unacceptable risk to children. The bill will make a number of amendments to the Act to improve information sharing where necessary for the protection of children. In particular, the bill provides for the boards to disclose information to an appropriate person or body if the board is of the opinion that to do so is reasonably necessary to prevent harm being caused to a child. The bill will further provide for the sharing of information between the board, other teacher regulatory authorities, employers and state authorities relevant to the health, safety, welfare and well-being of a child or class of children, or to manage risks to a child or class of children. These changes, among others in the bill, support recommendations of the National Review of Teacher Registration and the Royal Commission into Institutional Responses to Child Sexual Abuse. The development of the bill was subject to a significant amount of consultation, including an extensive consultation with teachers and other stakeholders on potential reforms to the Act and targeted consultations on a draft version of the bill. The feedback from stakeholders has directly helped shape the final form of the bill, and I thank everybody and anybody who has contributed feedback to this important reform. While I am giving thanks, I also want to thank the Chair of the Teachers Registration Board, the Honourable Dr Jane Lomax-Smith, for the extensive work that she did in leading the public consultation on this bill, and I want to pay a special tribute to Dr Peter Lind, who was our Teachers Registrar for some 5.5 years up until last Friday, when he determined that retirement, taking some time to see our beautiful state before eventually moving to New Zealand, from whence he came, was preferable to continue acting in the service of the people of South Australia. For his service, I give him thanks. I give him particular thanks for the work he did, along with Jane Lomax-Smith, in the public consultation in relation to this bill, the advice given to government in its development, and his extensive work to ensure that the interests of teachers, children and schools in South Australia were served well by the Teachers Registration Board over the period of his tenure. We wish well Leonie Paulson, who has taken on the role as Registrar of the Teachers Registration Board, effective on Monday just past. With that, I seek leave to insert the explanation of clauses into Hansard without my reading them.
Leave is sought. Is leave granted?